Investment risk is such a substantial part of your financial picture, and it should be something you consider as you're about to enter retirement. I have seen retirees go into panic as of late, and the reason for this is losses. They haven't really planned out their retirement, or they haven't really looked at their investments to see if they're in the right risk profile. Because if you're not, you could be putting a lot on the line when it comes to your future. You could be putting your retirement on the line, your spending, your goals may be pushed back. You might not be able to leave an estate like you intended to. So you need to take the right steps to make sure that this is still going to be possible. There are three key factors that you need to think about when it comes to your risk profile. And the first one is timeline, the second being goals, and the third being your overall portfolio size. Those are the three biggest pieces that are going to impact how you have your investments kind of focused, how you have them directed in retirement, and even leading up to retirement as well. So first off, let's talk about timeline. Once you've entered retirement, you're going to see a change in your lifestyle. Before retirement, there was this period where if you saw your funds dip, you could easily just work a little bit longer and allow your funds to bounce back. But once you're in retirement, you don't have this same luxury. You need to access those funds, and you don't really have the ability just to push that off or earn income from other areas in order to make this work. Ultimately, you're going from earning a paycheck to paying yourself in retirement. And you're paying yourself through your retirement funds that you've worked so hard to save up for. And you need to be able to access those funds on a regular basis in order to basically sustain you and to supply you through retirement. If you're risking those funds, you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on yourself, and also it's going to be forcibly changing your habits through the next 10, 15, 20 years of your retirement plan. If you put too much risk in your portfolios, you might have losses that are really going to impact later on, and it could eventually mean that you're running out of funds for retirement later in life, which means you might be reliant on just government pensions in order to sustain you, which may not be what you've been hoping for or looking for in your retirement goals. Additionally, later in life, if you are running out of those funds because you took too much risk that you weren't able to actually take on earlier, you might be reliant on family members to help bail you out in a sense, or become more reliable on them. So not only are you putting pressure on yourself, but you could also be putting unseen pressure on your family members as a result of this. Yes, your accounts will bounce back, but will there be enough time for them to bounce back before you need to access these funds? Or are you going to be pulling out losses? And how does that actually impact your financial plan? The next piece to consider is goals. So this goes really hand in hand with your risk. If your goal is to spend the most possible in retirement, then taking on more risk probably isn't the best option for you. The reason for this is you're going to want to be able to access those funds. And if, we saw a dip back in 2022, if we see that happening again in the future, it's going to be harder to actually take those funds out because they're going to be coming out as a loss, and that's going to hurt you going forward. If you're wanting to leave a larger estate at the end of the day, this might indicate that you have the ability to take on more risk because the time horizon is exponentially longer. You have the ability to just leave investments in there, let them grow, creating a bigger estate to pass on later in life. Ultimately, if this is the case, you aren't reliable on those funds in the short term, and that longer term growth will then allow those fluctuations in the market, allowing you to have a bit more risk involved, meaning that if the accounts go up, that's great. If they dip down any given year, you're not going to be overly concerned. If all you can think about is maximizing your retirement assets or just your overall investment balances, keep in mind that there are going to be periods where they go down, and can you handle those financially and also mentally going forward? The last factor I want to talk about today is portfolio size. So if you have a larger portfolio, typically this means you can take on a bit more risk. And the reason for this is consider yourself having, a very balanced portfolio, 50% equities, 40% fixed income, 10% cash. So if you have a larger portfolio, I'm sure you're able to access those fixed income and those cash balances, and they won't have dipped down as much in a low market. and that will allow your equities to continue to fluctuate and grow in those circumstances. But if you have a smaller account, you're not going to really have enough out of those more conservative investments or more low risk investments to sustain you during that period of time. So you need to keep in mind that if your portfolio size is large enough to sustain you in those periods of times versus if your accounts are smaller where you're going to be accessing funds at a loss as a result of taking on too much risk for what you actually should be taking on at that given point in time. Ultimately, you won't feel that same pressure on your financial losses as someone with a smaller account would, because ultimately they need those funds now versus someone with a larger account who can rely on other areas of income to sustain them. Not many people fall into that category, of course, and you need to be wary to not overplay your hand and really put your retirement on the line going forward. If you're unsure what your financial or your investment risk truly is, reach out to a professional. Get some advice on where you should be and how your investment should be placed going forward to make sure that you're at a point where you're not going to feel that pressure in retirement and you're going to be able to actually enjoy your time then versus constantly feeling strained or concerned about where you are sitting financially going forward.